All right, let's jump right in. You ready for another deep dive with me?
Always ready.
Awesome. Okay, so today we are going to try to figure out the murder of Nicole Pet
Yes.
back in 2006.
Yeah.
We are using as our source material the podcast 48 Hours, Relentless.
It's a good one.
Yeah, this one is really interesting, and it's a case that starts out kind of like any other missing persons case. Woman goes missing. It's a little mysterious, but as the story unfolds, you really see how dedicated her mother was, and you find out a lot of really interesting details.
A lot of twists and turns in this one for sure.
So this is going to be a good one. I guess the best place to start, as always, is with the victim in this case. That is Nicole Pet. So tell me a little bit about Nicole's life leading up to her disappearance.
Yeah, so the podcast really starts by painting this picture of Nicole's life in Seattle. Right on the surface, things seem to be pretty good. She's married, she's living in this, nice city. But as we kind of dig deeper, we find out more about her past and some of the struggles she had, like her battle with endometriosis.
Right. And I think it's important to explain what that is because not everyone might know.
Absolutely.
So endometriosis is a really painful condition where the tissue that is similar to the lining of the uterus starts growing outside of the uterus.
Oof. Yeah, and it can cause really debilitating pain.
Yeah, I've heard it's extremely painful.
That's right. And in Nicole's case, this chronic pain actually led to a dependence on painkillers, which unfortunately spiraled into addiction.
Wow, so she was dealing with a lot.
She was, yeah. And this becomes a really key detail later on in the investigation. Her past struggles with addiction become this point of focus.
Right. Well, before we get too far into that, I mean, she's more than just her struggles, obviously.
Of course. I mean,
what else can you tell me about Nicole? Like, what was she like as a person?
well, she's described as being incredibly close with her family, especially her mother. And despite all of these challenges, she was in recovery. She had built a new life for herself. She'd gotten married to her husband, David.
I mean, she was trying to turn things around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She was really striving for a better life. And it's just heartbreaking to see how it all ended.
Yeah. Yeah, and speaking of heartbreaking, there was this one detail about Nicole's childhood that I just found so poignant. She was apparently obsessed with Snow White.
Oh, yeah.
Like, insisted on being called Snow White for a while.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it just made me think, like, was she searching for that fairy tale ending,
That happily ever after?
Yeah, exactly, and it just makes her story even more tragic.
It does. It adds this whole other layer to her. It shows that she was a dreamer, that she had hopes and aspirations.
And then, boom. In October of 2006, she just disappears.
Vanishes without a trace.
The podcast really captures the chaos of those early days. Her friends and family are frantic. The police are hitting dead ends. And then there's her husband, David.
Yeah, David's behavior in those first few days is, it's definitely strange.
What do you mean strange?
He just seems so detached, unemotional almost, like he isn't processing the gravity of the situation.
Interesting. And you mentioned his odd statements. What was it that stood out to you the most?
Well, there was this one thing he kept bringing up about missing pain pills, Nicole's pain medication.
Yeah, I remember that part.
It was almost as if he was trying to steer the investigation in a certain direction, like planting the seed of a possible relapse.
Right. Trying to make it seem like maybe she fell off the wagon and that's why she went missing.
Exactly. But here's the thing. The police never actually found any evidence to support that theory.
So then what was his game?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
So then 9 days after she vanished, they find her body.
In a field, naked, and she'd been strangled.
Oh, my gosh.
It's a horrifying scene, and the details are just chilling. But there's one specific detail that's especially strange.
What's that?
She was still wearing her night guard.
Her night guard, really?
Yeah, the one you wear, to protect your teeth at night.
Okay, so why is that weird?
Well, think about it. To strangle someone who's wearing a night guard, that takes a lot of force, like a significant amount, and it suggests that the murder most likely happened somewhere else, like maybe at home, and then her body was moved.
Oh, wow, I see.
Which contradicts David's alibi completely. He claimed he was nowhere near their apartment.
Right. And there was also that detail about her feet being clean, right?
Yes, exactly. She hadn't walked to where her body was found, like she had been carried or transported there.
So even more evidence that points away from David's alibi.
Right. But at this point, the police still don't have enough to arrest him, so the case kind of goes cold for a while, and that's when Nicole's mother, Gail, enters the picture.
Oh, yeah, Gail, this is where the story gets really wild.
Hold on to your hats, because Gail is a force to be reckoned with.
She was not about to let her daughter's case just fade away.
No, she was not.
She was constantly pushing the police doing her own investigating and even resorting to some pretty unconventional tactics to try to get to the truth.
I mean, you gotta admire her persistence.
Oh, absolutely. She was relentless.
Her determination is extraordinary, and while some might question her methods, there's no denying the impact she had.
I mean, who leaves a blonde wig covered in fake blood on their suspected killer's doorstep?
I mean, that's bold.
That's next level.
It's definitely outside the box, but, it's important to remember that Gail's actions weren't just about revenge. This was about keeping the spotlight on Nicole's case.
Right. For years, it seemed like the investigation had stalled and Gail refused to let it go.
Exactly. Her tactics kept the story in the public eye, and that kind of attention can be crucial in these cases.
Totally. And it wasn't just the wig. She even left David a note at his work that said, quote, "I will be in here every day to make your life as miserable as you've made mine," end quote.
Oh.
Talk about a mama bear protecting her cub.
Yeah, it's a raw and visceral reaction to the pain and injustice she felt, and honestly, who can blame her?
Not me.
She lost her daughter, and for years it seemed like the person responsible was going to get away with it.
So she took matters into her own hands.
Exactly, and it raises an interesting question. Did Gail's actions actually help the investigation, or did they hinder it?
Good question, and that's something we're going to explore further as we dive deeper into this case.
Definitely, but before we move on, I'm curious, what was your initial reaction to Gail's tactics?
I mean, I get it. She was desperate.
Right.
She wanted answers. She wanted justice for her daughter. I can't imagine the pain she was going through.
Yeah, it's hard to judge someone's actions when they're operating from a place of such immense grief and trauma.
I mean, she was a mother who had lost her child, and she was doing everything she could to keep her daughter's memory alive and to make sure that her killer didn't escape accountability.
Exactly. And it's a good reminder that behind every true crime story, there are real people grappling with unimaginable loss and pain.
Absolutely. The human cost of these crimes is something we can't forget.
Right. And in this case, Gail's journey, her fight for justice, is just as compelling as the forensic evidence or the courtroom drama.
It really is. So buckle up because we are just getting started.
This is going to be a wild ride.
Okay, so we've got Gail, this mother, who is just like, she's like a dog with a bone, right?
Yeah, she's not letting go.
No, she's not letting go, and the cops are kind of like at a standstill. But then a new set of detectives come on the scene, Pavlovich and Mellis, and things start to change. Like, what was different about these guys?
Well, they weren't just, looking at the old files. They were really digging in, re-examining every detail.
Fresh eyes.
Fresh eyes, exactly. And they start to see this pattern in David's behavior after Nicole disappears. And there's this one particular thing, this phone call he made from Nicole's phone just hours after she vanished.
You're talking about that call where he pretended to be Nicole?
Yes, that's the one.
Called her work, left a message saying she wasn't feeling well.
Exactly.
Right.
At the time, it seemed like a simple gesture, right? A caring husband. But the detectives, they weren't buying it.
They were like, no way.
Yeah. They pulled the cell tower data for that call, and guess what?
Right.
It placed David right near where Nicole's body was eventually found.
No way.
Yeah.
So he's calling from her phone pretending to be her, but he's nowhere here where he said he was.
Exactly. It was a huge blunder.
What a slip up.
I know, right? And it was a turning point in the case because it showed that he was intentionally trying to mislead the investigation.
Right.
And it linked him directly to the area where Nicole's body was found.
So finally, after more than 6 years, they arrest David for Nicole's murder.
Can you imagine the emotions Gail must have been feeling?
Oh my gosh, relief, vindication, but also probably just anger.
So much anger.
Sadness.
It must have been overwhelming for her, all those years of carrying the weight of this unsolved crime, the constant questioning, the doubt.
Yeah, and then finally an arrest.
Finally a break in the case and validation for her relentless pursuit of justice.
But it's also a reminder, right, that Nicole is gone.
Yeah, that this is real, that her daughter is never coming back.
So the trial begins, and man, the prosecution, they really went hard painting David as this heartless, cheating husband who wanted to be free of Nicole.
They weren't holding back.
No, they weren't. They brought in his ex-girlfriends to testify about his manipulative behavior.
They wanted to show the jury that this guy was capable of deception, that he could lie and manipulate to get what he wanted.
And then there's Sabrina.
Oh, yeah, the woman David was having an affair with while he was still married to Nicole.
That must have been explosive.
Her testimony was crucial because it corroborated the prosecution's narrative that David was unhappy in his marriage and looking for a way out.
So it gave him a motive.
Exactly.
But the defense wasn't just going to sit back and take it.
No, they fought back hard.
What was their strategy?
They tried to shift the focus to Nicole painting her as troubled and unstable, suggesting that maybe her death was an accident or even suicide.
Oh, wow. Trying to blame the victim.
Exactly. They
Yeah.
brought in her doctor to talk about her history of addiction.
Right. Trying to make it seem like maybe she relapsed and overdosed or something.
Yeah, they were planting that seed of doubt in the jury's mind.
It's just so awful to think about them trying to make her responsible for her own death.
It's a classic defense tactic.
But the prosecution, they had a secret weapon, Gail.
Oh, yeah. Gail's testimony was powerful.
Heartbreaking but powerful.
She spoke about her daughter's life, her struggles, her triumphs, her love for David. She even shared details about the last time she saw Nicole, the phone calls they had.
And remember that chilling detail about what David said at Nicole's funeral?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
I think you'd take so hard.
Oh, that just sent chills down my spine. I showed a complete lack of empathy.
Right.
And the prosecution used that to further solidify their argument that he was a manipulative and emotionally detached person.
And of course, the defense tried to use Gail's actions against her, bringing up the late-night phone calls, the wig incident, that note she left at his workplace.
They were trying to discredit her, make her look unstable.
But Gail held her own on the stand.
Oh, she did.
Admitted to everything, but made it clear that she was driven by her love for her daughter.
That she was desperate for justice.
And the jury, they saw right through the defense's tactics.
They did, and after days of deliberation on Gail's 71st birthday, the verdict came in.
Guilty.
Guilty. It must have been such a bittersweet moment for Gail.
Right, all those years of waiting and fighting and finally justice.
It's incredible to think about the strength and resilience she showed throughout this whole ordeal.
It's a testament to the power of a mother's love. I mean, can you imagine waiting 6 years to hear that guilty verdict?
I can't even imagine.
Like what that must do to you emotionally. Just years spent in limbo, you know?
The not knowing, the constant questioning.
Just replaying everything over and over in your head.
It's just incredible to think about the strength Gail must have had to keep going to never give up.
And even after all of that, even after they found him guilty, there are still some unanswered questions.
Right. We know that David killed Nicole, but the why, the motive, it's still a bit murky.
Was it a crime of passion? Was it about the affair, or was there something else going on that we just don't know about?
Yeah, the podcast kind of explores different theories, but ultimately it leaves that question of motive open.
I guess that's real life, right? It's not always black and white.
No, it's messy. There are always these layers of complexity that we may never fully understand.
And I think that's part of what makes these true crime stories so fascinating.
It's that glimpse into the darkness of human nature, the things we don't want to believe are possible.
The what-ifs, the could-have-beens.
It's a reminder that the world can be a very unpredictable and sometimes dangerous place.
Yeah. And one of the things that really stuck with me from this story was Gail's decision to forgive David.
Oh my gosh. I know, after everything she went through, all the anger, the pain.
To choose forgiveness.
It's just remarkable. It speaks volumes about her character and her faith.
She said in the podcast that her faith played a big part in that process, and that she believes Nicole would have wanted her to find peace.
It's a beautiful sentiment, choosing to embrace forgiveness rather than bitterness.
Finding a way to honor her daughter's memory by letting go of the hate.
It's a powerful lesson for all of us.
I think this deep dive has been a real journey for both of us. We explored this tragic case. We talked about the evidence, the trial, the emotional roller coaster that everyone went through.
And we got to reflect on some pretty big themes, justice, forgiveness, the resilience of the human spirit.
It's a reminder to never give up hope, to keep fighting for what you believe in, and to know that even in the darkest of times, love can prevail.
Gail's story is truly an inspiration, and I think it leaves us with a lot to think about.
So as we wrap up, I have one final question for you. If you could ask Gail one question, what would it be?
That's a good one. I think I would ask her what advice she would give to other families who are going through a similar experience. Families who are dealing with the loss of a loved one and the long road to justice.
Because if anyone understands that journey, it's Gail.
Absolutely. And I think her words could offer a lot of comfort and guidance to those who are struggling.
Well, that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure as always.
And to all of you listening out there, thank you for joining us on this journey. Remember to be kind to one another and never give up hope.